Time machines were not an unusual idea, but they were a dangerous one. I knew this already, yet everyone around me kept feeling the need to remind me. I could never convince them that my little time machine would be the safest one in the universe. I tried to make them see how careful I really was. I even had a few of the most intelligent Vortian scientists pinklight my progress. Some Urkin supported me. Zim was one of them. Apparently, he too had some sort of a time machine, except only Gur's toy piggies were able to transfer through it. Some of these stories of his were just bizarre. Some Urkins questioned me. Their doubt was understandable, and I did not hold it against them. I agreed with them, in fact. This machine could have been an irreversible disaster waiting to happen. Just like the disaster that cost me some of my memories, some of my health, and I think some of my sanity. If I had not completed this thing I grew to obsess over, more of my sanity was sure to be lost. I had healed from my loss over time. I still missed Eros, but my depression did not overthrow me like before. There was something else bothering me more, a mysterious, hazy feeling. It was the instinct that Eros still needed me. Others, including Zim, had tried to say that I was mistaking this feeling for bereavement and denial. That would make sense. They were probably right. I was willing to accept that Eros was gone, but only if he was gone. I would be failing him otherwise, neglecting the possibility of his existence continuing elsewhere, allowing myself to live my life oblivious to whatever was still happening to him, my little Eros. I was obligated to confirm Eros's death with concrete proof before I moved on from it. And that was why I built this machine. It was unnamed, though I had been sticking with Time Jumper as a reference to the Time Jumper cable thing I used in the Massive. It turned out that it wasn't called an emergency Time Jumper cable, but the emergency cheating cable. Likely because Urkins were not known for turning away from a challenge. The so-called cheating cable didn't go back in time the way other time machines did. It was hardly a time machine at all, not affecting the dimension of time, only the ship it was in. It was more of a simple teleportation device instead, carrying the ship back to a previous point in the path it had taken, except also a teleportation device that reversed the effects of wherever the ship went. But the Florbus, a broken, law-defying thing, didn't allow all of the effects to be reversed this time. Being the one who activated the cable while making physical contact with it, I suffered the glitchy, painful consequences, and would continue to suffer them for as long as I lived. I was strong enough to live as a defective, but I wasn't strong enough to live without answers. Was Eros really gone? Or was he suffering? Or was he nowhere, stuck in limbo? Was he saved by me, and I didn't know it yet? I saw him being pulled away with my ship, but that was it. I hadn't seen the destruction. I had soon realized that I couldn't completely believe it if I didn't see it. For ages, I had believed it by default. That should have been simply it. But somehow, I still had the vague sense that it was not over, and that I shouldn't have been giving up on my little sir. Maybe, by some miracle, it was not too late after all. I stared at the thing in my hands. The thing in the shape of a disc with a 1-foot diameter and a 2-inch width. The Time Jumper, finally finished after months of development and waiting to be used for the first time. Its screen idly and innocently blinking today's date. I took a deep breath in an unconscious attempt to muster more courage, before saying to the Vortian behind me without looking at him, "I should be back." The Vortian, Matalino, quietly replied, "What if you aren't?" "Keep that video with you. My message to everyone. I do not want anyone being accused of murder." "Do you think they'll understand?" "If they think it's selfish of me to risk leaving them, making this sacrifice for my Sir unit, it's alright. But I said what I needed to say in that message. I'll be no use to them if I'm too distracted. I have to fix that. And this is the only way." and Eros deserves this. I proceeded with the complicated steps needed to operate the time jumper and pinpoint the time and location I needed to get to. It displayed both upon both the physical screen and a circular holographic screen above me as I searched for them. Locating disturbances in space was a simple task for this machine. The more horrible, the more sensitive. It took no more than 3 minutes to find the Florpus. As soon as I tried to have it look inside, however, the screen faded to noise. Pink, green, and purple noise, its texture glitchy. Supposedly, the time jumper couldn't convert the visibility of something as broken and clustered as a Florpus into still pixels. In the corner of the screen showed the percentage of my chances of not disturbing the exact timeline we have now, which had to be, no matter what, no lower than 100. I programmed the time jumper to not allow time travel otherwise. The percentage read 100, only because there was no one and nothing around in the current pinpoint spot. I squinted, determined, as I dug deeper into the Florpus. Despite not being able to see it, I would know when I reached where the incident took place as soon as the percentage dropped. When it suddenly dropped to 65, I stamped once in victory and didn't worry about the volume. Matalino and I were in a top-secret workstation underneath the first floor of my tower, and the walls were soundproof. Even if someone did hear, this room was locked down tight. "What's that?" Matalino mumbled. He was squinting at the holographic screen. When I looked at it myself, I found what he was referring to. Barely visible still, but noticeable. A figure in the static. I lost my breath for a moment, recognizing it. I went in deeper, trying to get a closer look. Every angle I inspected made the answer clearer. I choked it out. My ship. It was silent as both Matalino and I processed how amazing this was, and how close I was to success. I didn't need to see my own face to know its expression had more hope than it had in so very long. But I felt the anxiety upon it too. The kind of worry that made me want to reach into the screen and grab what I saw, as if it would work like that. This was the point after my ship was yanked away from the massive. Eros was in there. My lost little Sir unit was in there, convinced that he was done for. I had to raise the percentage back to 100. I moved the time setting forward, slowly, allowing my ship to shoot further away from myself and the massive. My pulse quickened as I prayed that I wasn't about to watch the figure be obliterated. Fortunately, all it did was spiral. I sighed loudly in relief when I saw the corner once again read 100. This meant no one, including my past self, would be able to see what my present self would do. Except Eros would. His seeing me would apparently not affect our timeline, which told me that he and my ship really did vanish, but possibly not in the way I had thought all this time. I began to hyperventilate. I thought back on what I experienced there, but with new thoughts. Had I rescued Eros meanwhile? Did a future Syss, which was about to be me, swoop in to carry Eros back to her point in time, which was about to be this? Was Eros safe all this time? My brow furrowed again as my confidence skyrocketed. If my theory was correct, if it happened then, that meant no matter what, it was going to happen. No matter what I thought or what choices I made, there was no arguing with the future. The future would always dominate over the present, as the present dominated over the past. Why does it show the safety percentage already? Matalino inquired. I thought there was a simulation. That's the next step, I said. What it's showing right now is how things look so far. My test will determine how I'll do. But if that right there already says 100, it's going to stay that way, even if I do poorly rehearsing my actions. In fact, I think I may have to skip the simulation. I feel as if displaying the Florpus is dangerous enough already. After this, I don't plan to encounter another Florpus for any reason for as long as I live. If your survival percentage isn't perfect, are you really sure about overwriting it? No. But like I said, if I don't do this, it's going to drive me up the wall, and I won't be able to function as I should. Just keep that video with you if I don't return. Let everyone know that there was just an accident, and that it was all my fault. Worriedly, but respectfully, Matalino nodded and saluted me before I activated an invisible bubble helmet and allowed myself to disappear in a flash of blue and white. Huh? So this was what Limbo was. It was not pitch black. It was brightly colored. I let myself drift there for a moment, in awe, disbelief, and just a bit of fear. It was more silent than outer space. Nothing was ahead of me, behind me, below me, nor above me. Not just for miles, but for infinity. It was quite daunting. Everyone and everything I ever knew did not exist here, except for myself and the time jumper, of course. I was glad I had been smart enough to have on a bubble helmet. Like outer space, I could tell by the slight pressure in my gloves and uniform that air was also non-existent here. And one accident in my invading career let me know how terrifying it was to suffocate in space. Eros had made sure I didn't die. He always made sure of that. I was determined to return the favor, even if that wasn't the point of getting him back. This was such a confusing place, and I hoped being here wasn't as dangerous as being in the Florpus. I was almost sure my body wasn't minutes away from imploding, but just in case, I rushed through the next step I had to take using the time jumper. I forced the scream to zoom all the way inside the ship to make sure that was where I'd be carried to. I saw an outline of my ship's interior and a metal little creature that wasn't Eros's original form, but I knew that was only due to the Florpus. Over and over, it kept transforming us into all kinds of life forms. This creature, with a blocky arm, saluted, still in the last position I saw. But I remembered his expression being blank. Here, his eyes shaped into thin arches to appear shut. He was bracing himself. I knew he was in distress, but had been trying to stay strong. There you are, my little sir. Oh, Eros. I didn't hold back the sob that slipped through the middle of that name, or the sharp hiccuping gasp that followed. I could be as emotional as I wanted here, without alerting or disturbing anyone. But I turned down the opportunity. No. Stop. Not here. Not now. I mustn't lose focus. I'm coming. I confirmed to the time jumper that I was ready. A message then inquired how I wished to proceed, along with 2 holographic buttons reading play and skip. It was about the simulation. I thought about my decision longer than I wanted to. I felt uncomfortable with every option I had. Throwing myself in a false playback of the selected timeline before throwing myself in the real one, skipping straight to the real one, and most of all, backing out. The little sounds of my time jumper had broken the silence, and my thundering heartbeat joined it as soon as I came to a conclusion. If odds were I had one chance at most, I was going for it. I had to skip the simulation. After what the Florpus did to me, I did not trust it to not cause my time jumper to break down. I had to finish this as soon as I could. With one firm finger, I touched skip. Authorization required. There were 3 passwords. My fingers almost resembled Gur's dancing little legs as I typed in the words in our Irkin alphabet. Taco, taco, sandwich. During development, my first choice had been thank the stars. but that was too expected of me.
Beginning countdown.
This was it. If this amazing creation was as operational as it was built to be, if it was a complete success, I was a dozen seconds away from being back in the raging mess that changed my life. And I didn't even get to see what my survival percentage was. As it counted down, my time jumper changed form. I held out a quivering fist as it shrank into that of a metal wristband. On its own, it clasped onto my arm. And then came another flash of blue and white.
3, 2, 1.
I was familiar with this shrill, electric buzz in my head. I heard it when I first met Zim face to face. Before he trusted me, he slammed me into a wall as hard as he could. I had several modifications done for the wired equipment in my head. It was a bit more durable than when I encountered a mad Zim. I was not knocked senseless this time, but if the impact was any harder, I would have been. Everything happened so fast. I couldn't have been in the Florpus for more than 4 seconds. The first second, I was trying to maintain my balance while recognizing the feeling of being in the seat of my old ship. The second, I was looking at my ship's interior, the swelling colors of the Florpus, my mutated arms, then finally, at long last, Eros, but in a blobby form. The third second, I lunged for him. The fourth second, I commanded the time jumper on my arm in one push of a button to take us back to my present. I knew the next flash had done just that. I felt myself in my true form again, but we were still in my ship, which was still being thrown out of control. Through the window above me, I caught a glimpse of a magenta sky, Urk's sky. Then I saw brown, Urk's surface. My ship crashed, and on the ground I lay flat on my back, in the position I landed in. I didn't want to move yet. I didn't want to aggravate anything serious that might have happened to me. Bones could have been broken, and though the complications in my head and pack were treatable, I was scared to find out what would happen if a wire was severed. So I lay still, and I kept my eyes shut to ease my splitting headache. I was supposed to be transported back to where I started, in the secret workstation, without my ship. The time jumper did still have a kink after all. Through the screaming sound in my head, I heard the voices of Urkins who were clearly alarmed by the crash. They grew closer when someone cried out upon discovering me.
The Empress!
More dismayed, urgent voices and footsteps.
It just appeared up there next to the tower and flipped around.
It's going so fast. I don't know what could have been going on.
Is she alive? Stay back. She might need to reactivate. What if she can't? She's defective. Wait, I can see her breathing. Who has their Sir with them right now? Maybe their X-ray vision can see if...
They were so agitated. I had to say something. All I could manage, though, was, "Stop. I'm..." It was enough to let them know that all I needed was a moment to gather my wits.
Empress Syss?
Whose ship is this?
Whose Sir is this?
I shifted my thumb. I felt a metal surface. My other thumb. I felt the round shoulder of a Sir unit. I had Eros locked in my arms. This full realization made me blink my eyes open and bolt upright without thinking twice. I was sore, but I could immediately tell the injuries were minor. The headache even subsided. Now it was my turn to be worried. Eros hadn't moved. and the sight of his eyes when I looked down upon them made me start to panic. They were black. I had him. I had him with me. I finally had him with me, and yet something wrong happened to him. I didn't know what. Before I could panic, however, I found that the tip of his antenna, his shoulders, wrists, and chest were still lit red. I softly cried out, startled and relieved, when Eros reached out and waved his arm in front of himself. In confusion, it seemed. He patted around the metal cast on my chest. He then used every limb to climb out of my hold and onto his feet, then explore his surroundings with his claw still in front of him.
Vision impaired.
He was only blind. That was definitely fixable. The sound of his robotic voice sent my heart aflutter. To hear it again, to see his little body walking around after so long, to see that his rescue was a success, gave me such a feeling that words couldn't do justice. I trembled, and I grinned, gently putting a hand out to Eros's chest to stop him. He obeyed, muddled by the touch. I watched his head turn in every direction, and I whispered, then cheered, reaching both hands out to the stars.
It worked! I did it! It worked!
I collapsed back on the ground with a laugh, gleefully scrubbing the side of my face into the dirt.
What is the meaning of this?
Eros demanded. I quickly drew near, on my knees to keep to his level, and my hands clamped onto his shoulders.
It's me! Eros.
My voice softened halfway through, as Eros's expression showed recognition, and his eyes flickered to red. The Syrianet's automatic self-repairing mechanism finished mending what was out of place. I could feel my emotional grin spread wider as I gave Eros the time to look me over, after he did so to the wrecked ship behind us. He stared at me, his eyes arched slightly in perturbation.
Sir, you were on the massive.
I am. I'm grieving you as we speak. And I'm doing what you gave me the second chance to do.
What happened, sir?
I held out the arm that was still wearing my invention. I would show it to Eros in its default form later.
I time jumped with this. I made it. It took me 2 years, but I found a way to get you. For you, we've been separated for just a minute. For me, it's been 2 years. That whole time I
felt the tight grip in my chest. There was going to be tears. I dropped to my hands.
The Hurricane Race found peace for the most part, but I couldn't. So much happened, Eros. So much. I'm a defective because of that Florpus. Red and Purple didn't care. I lost some memories, important ones. For 2 months I couldn't figure out why I felt so empty, and it wasn't just because I was betrayed, wounded, and warned that I was probably done for. But you did click back to me, and I cannot begin to describe how much it destroyed me.
My voice cracked. My head hung below my trembling shoulders. Liquid began to distort my vision. I panted hard and tried to hold on. I was such a mess already. Eros did not deserve to see me this way. He had never seen me this way.
Sir.
I heard him say, in a tone I could not automatically discern. He probably wanted me to show him my face again. Out of shame, I did not.
Syss.
It was not completely unusual for Eros to say my name, but it intrigued me every time. He said it firmly. At first, I assumed he was annoyed with me. I spared him a quick, hesitant glance to see if his eyes were narrowed, or blank as they usually were. They were indeed reshaped into semicircles, but they were angled to appear sad or worried. I understood now. His voice came out sharp because he wanted me to take it easy. My story and explanation must have alarmed him also. A short moment after Eros spoke, I whimpered, staring at the dirt floor right underneath my chest.
I know you don't understand. I know you still have to catch up to our time and see how different things are. You're still programmed as a hardened robot soldier. And the way I'm acting right now doesn't make any sense, but I just can't help.
Yes, sir, it does.
When Eros cut me off, his voice was soothing.
I'm not like the other Sir units, remember?
He then said,
Weakness is not negative in my programming. You were never a threat to me. How much you weep will not change that.
that was it. I had his blessing. Ignoring the ring of perplexed and concerned Urgans all around us, I repressed nothing. I grabbed my little Sir unit again. I squeezed him, and I cried hard for the last time in ages.
Oh, your eyes.